Let's go! Come on, everybody, and let's get to bumping, cause it's trailblazer time. Baby, Rip City's jumping now.
Okay, Brindle up the middle. Hit!
Come on, everybody.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the 216th edition of the Holy Backboard Podcast. I am Dustin here in Rip City, and I got my man.
Sage chilling here in Beaverton, Oregon, and man, people have asked for it, and we're delivering the Dustin TED Talk. Are you excited about diving deep into one of your most passionate things and sharing your thoughts and opinions with the world?
Absolutely. This really all came about from one of those random tweets that start to go viral, and the account was Khalil_for_real, came out about 2 weeks ago, and it's just like, if you could speak passionately about a topic for 20 minutes without preparing, what would you talk about? And immediately I was like, the 89-92 Trailblazers and why they should have won a championship. It got some pretty good traction on my personal social, and so I just threw the question out there. Would people be interested in me kind of just doing a deep dive on the early 90s Blazers on Holy Backboard? And the response was pretty positive. So this was something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. So I did do like a little bit of research, just numbers wise, but everything is really right in the dome right here.
You're going to go straight from the heart with it. And like, I already know, like, this is going to be very well researched, but most of it's coming from the dome piece, off the dome. So I definitely am excited. I mean, this is something that I guess I was alive for, but barely. I was born in 91. So you've had your experiences growing up with these teams. So it's a different type of dedication that you have these teams. So I'm very excited to just let you spit your truth. And man, I was so bored. I was like, dude, do you want to just do you just want to record today instead of waiting till the weekend? Sometimes this quarantine can be kind of boring. So I'm very happy to be here with you. It's funny that we are now at 216, and a podcast that has been in the Blazers community for the last 7 years just ended at episode 215. And for me, when we first started it, it was like the gold standard of what we had to be and try and be better than. So to see them ending with, on the same episode we ended on is kind of like, okay, we got to pay homage to them and what they did with the Rip City Report. And I know you're friends with Casey. I've only talked online with him about stupid stuff on Rip City 1 back in like 2011.
Yeah, I listened. If there was a Blazer podcast, I would listen to the Rip City Report. I don't always listen to podcasts. I have to be in the right frame of mind. I usually, when I listen, I really listen intently. I can't just have it on as background noise like most people do in music. So I really have to have a task at work that I can just kind of do off of muscle memory, so I can really intently listen. And when there was big news, like that was the one I always wanted to listen to. When I had to commute for work, I would put that one on first and foremost. It's crazy that it started in 2013 because that's when I was still working for the team. I was the one sending out those tweets, those Facebook posts when it first launched, thinking of bylines and copy and what it was all about to inform our audience. And, I left after the 2014 season, and they really, really took it from there. They got like a sweet intro. It's the Rashid and Damon Stoudemire Beat Nuts, No Escape in this, which is a dope song, but with a Blazer twist. And then obviously they used the media day to their advantage. They got all of the players to give sweet intros like, hi, I'm Damian Lillard. You listen to the Rip City Report. So that added like a really nice touch to it. It was really good balance too, because you had Casey, who worked with the team, traveled with the team, built these relationships with the players. And then you have Joe Freeman, who has been in the business for nearly 2 decades, coming at it from just a traditional journalist, no fan, no emotion, it really involved point of view. So you kind of get a nice little balance. It wasn't too cynical. There wasn't too much homerism. It was a really good mix. And I really do think that Oregonian is making a big mistake trying to do their own podcast network. Like last I checked, they're still getting marketed as Casey Holdahl from Trailblazers.com and Joe Freeman from the Oregonian. As Casey mentioned on that last episode, if it was up to the Blazers, this podcast would still be going on. So I think they missed the mark completely. But the Oregonian has been making foolish decisions for the last 10 plus years. So it's really no surprise. It's just a bummer that, we don't get to hear that for their community. I think the community suffers the most. And I'm looking forward to, Casey Lands. I know he did a podcast with Brooke Olzendam. I think it was First Bus. Obviously they can't do that one because they're not traveling with the team, but just hearing the behind the scenes of those road trips was great. Because again, back when I was working social was really low totem pole. We were not traveling. I would only work, go to the games if they were at home. So I didn't really get to experience it. So it's a way for myself to kind of live vicariously if I was able to travel back in the day. So, definitely shout out, RIP, whatever. It was one of the GOAT Blazer podcasts, and it will be missed. I mean, you could see there was, everyone was paying their respects in the comments, and, we were fortunate enough to get a shout out from Casey. And so that meant a lot to me. But yeah, it was just a great podcast, and hopefully it wasn't the final one. A couple years down the road, it will make its return, and that would be great for the community.
Without further ado, man, give the people what they want. This is the Dustin Haas TED Talk about the Portland Trail Blazers.
So I had to, I don't know if this will be shown on video or not, but if you're not, I've got my Terry Porter Zubaz snapback. I've got my Kevin Duckworth champion on. Like the 89 to 92 Trailblazers shaped who I am as a person. They play a huge role in my life. For those that don't know, I was looking to finish off my studies. I had gotten my junior college or my community college associate's degree. I had 2 years left. I was down to the University of Oregon or Portland State. Well, what happened to happen is the Blazers won the lottery in 2007 and your boy wanted season tickets. That was an easy decision for me. I decided to go to Portland State so I could get season tickets for the Portland Trail Blazers. That's how big of a role they play in my life. And it all stems back to the early Blazers. And it's not just that they were a basketball team in the state that I happen to live in. It was the fact that they were a team. They were great players on and off the court, and they won. And that means a lot when you're a young mind and you're starting to get, shaping your opinions on what you like and what you don't like. I didn't have any ties to basketball. I happened to stumble across some basketball cards at a parking lot barbecue we did in front of my fundraiser, in front of my dad's store. And it's like, oh, the Blazers, like this is pretty rad. And then I come to find out one of the best teams in the league. Like that plays a role. Like had they been a mediocre or a bad team, who knows? Maybe I follow Jordan and then I start player hopping like a lot of fans do today. Or maybe I pick up the Blazers later on in life. But they were good. They were elite. And I fell in love. And just how elite they were, they had a combined record of 179 and 67 over a 3-year span. They averaged 60 wins over a 3-year span, second only to the Chicago Bulls, who had 183 wins. In 90-91, they even had 63, tops in the NBA. Like they were dominant. And it all started, and this is another reason why I'm really passionate about it, because it feels like they were built the right way. It wasn't a Miami Big Three where they all decided to team up together in free agency. It was built through the draft and through really shrewd trades. And what I love about it is a lot of the players they picked, none of them would be considered lottery picks in today's NBA. And quite a few of them were small school success stories. So if we take a step back before we actually dive into the 89-90 season, you just look at how well Stu Inman and Bucky Buckwalter and that front office did in the mid 80s. You look at 1983, they're picking number 14. They take Clyde Drexler. Drexler is a bona fide top 50 player of all time. He was one of only 5 All-Stars from that draft class. Everyone remembers the 84 for the first round. Yes, it was a big toe stub taking Sam Bowie over the likes of Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan and losing the coin flip to get Hakeem Olajuwon. But they still did just an incredible job in the second round. They found a kid from Longwood, Virginia, Jerome Kersey, in the second round, 46th overall player taken. Kersey would go on to have a 10-plus year career in Rip City, be one of the most beloved players of all time. The next year, 85, they're picking late again in the first round. Pick number 24, they pick Terry Porter, who played at Wisconsin-Stevens Point. The level of competition is NAIA. And to put that into perspective for all of our Oregon fans around here, OIT down in Klamath Falls, that is an NAIA school. So that is the how tiny Terry Porter was playing at. And he was playing center. Portland gets him. He becomes one of 10 All-Stars from that 85 draft class. In 86. 86 is, in my opinion, one of the greatest draft classes in Blazer history. In the first round, they take Arvydas Sabonis. And at the time, taking foreign players, especially in the first round, everyone called the Blazers mad. Like, what wasted pick. I mean, the media was all over Portland for making that pick. Then they go, and then they take Drazen Petrovic in the third round, 60th player overall. They goofed up their first round pick. They had another one. They took Walter Berry. But they atoned for that quickly. They said, you're not working out. We're going to go and get this guy from San Antonio, Eastern Illinois, Kevin Duckworth. Well, what does Duck do? 2-time All-Star, 87, 88 most improved player. I was just reading one of my Blazer books, and Duck was pretty shocked when the Blazers took Sabonis because he thought he had a promise that Portland was going to take him. Well, it didn't happen that way, but we did get him during his rookie year. And then they followed it up just so smart in 89. Cliff Robinson, for whatever reason, had character issues or his reputation was damaged, should have gone top 10, top 15 based upon talent alone. For some reason, slips to the second round, number 36 overall. He becomes one of 9 All-Stars in that draft class. So Portland built that team. They built the heart of the team through that draft. And so you're looking at 4 starters, Drexler, Porter, Duckworth, and Kersey. Clearly, Petro doesn't come over until the 89 season, and due to what was then the Soviet Union, they would not allow Arvydas Sabonis to come over. We did not get to see Sabonis until the 95-96 season. Portland just really was never able to put it all together. They were clearly missing a player, the missing piece. I mean, everything was there. They couldn't get past the Lakers. They really couldn't finish in the top 4 of the conference. They blew a lead in the first round against the Utah Jazz with home court advantage. And it was time to make a change. Well, they made one of the best trades in franchise history. During this run, they made probably the best and the worst trade in franchise history. But that's just kind of how it goes when you're talking about the ebbs and the flows of an NBA front office. That things tend to even themselves out. But we'll start with the positive. And it was trading Sam Bowie in a first-round pick to get former All-Star Buck Williams from the New Jersey Nets. Buck was just a monster. I mean, just a monster defensive player. If you look at Maurice Lucas, you can kind of see similar things when you're looking at Buck Williams. He's going to be your enforcer. You can put him on the block against the premier power forward, and you don't have to worry about him. Buck will make that power forward work for everything that he's got. Fantastic rebounder, led the NBA in field goal percentage during this stretch. So you knew that Buck wasn't going to complain about shots. He filled a role of defensive tenacity, intelligence, and rebounding, and his character fit like a glove. Like, once they had that player, Portland was set. So you got your starting 5, you got Cliff Robinson, and the Blazers, they really surprised a lot of people. And they finished with 59 wins, second most in the NBA. They were a 3 seed due to the Lakers being the division winners. They were the 1 seed. So back then it was division kind of ranked the teams. We start off hot. sweeping the Dallas Mavericks. And I rewatched, let me take it a step back. I've watched nearly every playoff game that I can find from the 90 through 92 runs. On a personal note, I was unemployed for about 4 or 5 months last summer in 2019. And then clearly we've had the pandemic hit since March. So I've been at home. A lot of source of my entertainment came from going on YouTube and watching these old games and studying them and seeing how the team played and what went right and what went wrong. Like, I was 5 years old when this first started, so I vaguely remember actually watching the games live. It's thankful for YouTube for having these games really at my fingertips, because I can go back and I can see some plays that I haven't seen before. I've really had these video yearbooks that detail, they're about 45 minutes long. They detailed the 90, 91, 92 seasons. And I watched those like ad nauseum as a kid. So I was familiar with plays and obviously scores and what happened, but going back and watching the games, seeing how momentum changed when Portland was really able to just flourish in what was their downfall. Me being like a what if type of person, I always like to know, like, man, what if they would have done something different here? This is really kind of what this is all, coming into fruition about. It is just talking about this with all of you and seeing what if the Blazers would have done something different. But in that 1990 playoff run, watching that first game against Dallas, a lot of the chatter from the announcers was like, there's a lot of pressure on this team. They've only made it out of the first round once since winning that 77 championship. That was their biggest hurdle. Like, could they mentally get over that? I mean, they take care of Dallas. I mean, Drazen and Danny Young in game 2 really saved the day in that second quarter. We were down big and go down to Dallas, and they get the sweep. Of these 3 eras, this was the only first round sweep. It came at a cost. Kevin Duckworth breaks, I believe, his left hand, and Buck Williams really gets his eye scratched, causing him to wear his traditional goggles the rest of his career. Wayne Cooper even got dinged up, causing him to miss a couple of games against the Spurs, but they escaped 3-0. And now you're looking at a team that is going up against the rookie of the year in David Robinson, the San Antonio Spurs. Now, this wasn't your ordinary rookie. He was 24 years old. He fulfilled his commitment to the Naval Academy, so he came in a couple years later than when he was drafted. And the guy he could play in today's NBA. I mean, just so fluid, incredible athlete, could shoot, could defend, could block, rebound. Clearly one of the top 25, 30 players of all time, easy. Now you're Rick Adelman. What do you do? No Duckworth, and you can't really play Buck Williams on him. He puts in the rookie Cliff Robinson, and he goes off to show why he would also be a perfect modern NBA big, able to guard 3 through 5, can shoot, can rebound, can block shots. He stifles Robinson in game 1. And it's really a game of who has home court advantage. And watching those games, like there's still parts of it where I wonder, how did we get out of there? There was a 22-point lead that we blew in game 5. Went into overtime. David Wingate hits a crazy 3. We come back and win. In game 7, we are down like 7 points with 2 minutes to go, and then Drexler hits a 3, and there's a flurry. Strickland throws the ball over his head, and then they have to intentionally foul Drexler. It was just one of those, like, is this a team of destiny? Because when we were going down to San Antonio, we were getting just killed, and we were barely scraping by at home. And that was because back then they would play games like one day, sometimes back to back. Like, there was not a lot of rest in between, and they weren't traveling. Yes, they had Blazer One, but they weren't traveling like they're traveling now. And they were tired. They were without Cooper for a couple of games. Duckworth made that incredible comeback at the start of game 7 where the crowd stood up and just cheered. That's one of my favorite moments of all time, just, seeing Duckworth. And he's even interviewed in that 1990 video yearbook, Return to Rip City. And he's even said, like, if I had a tear to shed, it would have fell down my face that day. Like, and Duckworth was such a gentle giant that, like, anytime that he was happy, I feel happy, because I feel like if I was a player, I would be Kevin Duckworth. I'm pretty thin-skinned, And I think the criticism would get to me. I think it's so impressive how these athletes are able to just kind of shut out the white noise and just go on knowing that they're getting criticized with their every move. So I feel for Duck. That's why he's one of my favorites. But they get by him. And then up next, which was kind of playing into the team of destiny, was the Phoenix Suns, because you have the number 1 seed Los Angeles Lakers. They got knocked out in 5. This Phoenix team was coming in with Kevin Johnson, Jeff Hornacek, Tom Chambers, Dan Marley. I mean, they were freaking loaded. And they just handled the MVP Magic Johnson and the 63-win Lakers like that. They won 3 games in Los Angeles, or two of the 3 in Los Angeles, excuse me. And now you're having to, okay, we just came off an emotional 7-game series. We've got the Phoenix Suns who have had 9 days off, and they just found a way. They were down 20 at some point during the game 2, and they found a way to come back. All throughout the series, everyone was saying it's going to be a 7-game series because can't win on the road. Well, what did they do? They found a way to win in game 6 in Phoenix. There's that iconic shot of Williams, on the ground, clutching the ball as time runs out. They made the stop, and you're thinking, okay, this could really happen. And so watching, after dissecting the teams they played, who was on the roster, who was at their peak, 1990 was Portland's best opportunity to win a championship. And all my life, I thought it was 91 because I'm partial to that team. That was the first team that I got into. They had the 63 wins. They had the 16-game win streak leading into the playoffs. They had 3 All-Stars. But 1990, that's the one that really, I think, stings if you're a Blazer fan, lifelong or not, or just, you're young and you're going back and rewatching, because you have the Detroit Pistons. And yes, you don't have home court advantage. And I honestly don't know why Detroit had home court advantage. Both teams had 59 wins. Both teams split in the regular season. So either Detroit had a better conference record against the West than we did against the East. Who knows? But either way, we went to Detroit. We played really well. I mean, if you could go back, you really want game 1 back. We got outscored 29-19 in that fourth quarter. Isaiah did Isaiah things, but we bounced back. Despite 6 or 7 threes from Bill Laimbeer, we gutted out a win in Detroit. That was the only defeat the Pistons allowed at home in their new palace of Auburn Hills in the 1990 playoffs. So Portland's coming home. I don't know if the destiny ran out, or they maybe got a little ahead of themselves, being the first time that they're in the postseason. They had won something like 17 or 18 straight games against the Pistons in Portland's Memorial Coliseum going into that finals. So you have the next 3 in the Rose City. That's all you need. You tend to think you're going to close it out. That unfortunately that's not what happened. I think people who look at it and say, 5-game series, Pistons handle business. No, it wasn't like that. Do not be deceived by that 5-game series. The average margin of victory was 5.4 points. It shrinks down to 3 points if you remove game 3's 15-point outlier. Portland had so many chances to win that series. You look, game 4, Danny Young hits that prayer from half court, just milliseconds too late, which would have forced overtime. In game 5, we were up 7 points with under 2 minutes to go, and we just couldn't close it out. Vinnie Johnson, Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, they had all of the answers. Portland played great, but for all of those close wins that we had, maybe it was time again for things to even out. And regardless, you still obviously felt great. Like Portland, okay, we're the new kings of the Pacific Division. The time is ours. Like, yes, the bad boys, they got theirs, but okay, we're going to go out. And they went out and they made a trade that, looking back, may have not been the best move. They traded Byron Irvin in a first-round pick. Byron Irvin was Portland's 1989 first-round pick out of Missouri. And Danny Ainge, that they traded for the former Celtic champion who had played 1 lone year in Sacramento, from Eugene, basically a high school legend. And they brought in Ainge, a 3-point marksman. And what I love about that is it was his experience. And when he played, for the most part, he delivered. But what hurt Portland was Ainge really wasn't able to be a combo guard. He was a 2. couldn't really handle the ball, and that really threw off what Rick Adelman could do with his rotations, because you had Danny Young, who was starting to decline a little bit, and then you also now have Drexler at the 2, Kersey's at the 3. Okay, Cliff's nipping at the heels of Kersey to get some starting minutes. Then you've got Drazen Petrovic. And I'm going to, during this kind of talk about the Blazers and what could have happened, there were some fan questions, and I'll sprinkle them in as I see them come through. The first one is from Sir Frank Salat. So, was trading Drazen a mistake or a horrible mistake? This was a horrible mistake. There is no doubt about it. For those of you who have visited our website, holybackboard.com, the very first post is Beyond the Backboard, and we discuss the worst trades in franchise history, which ones we thought were the worst. For me, it was trading Drazen Petrovic in that 3-team deal with Denver and New Jersey, where we got the veteran Walter Davis in return. And probably a month or so ago, I read The Long Hot Winter by Rick Adelman for the second time. That was a book where he kind of described the season, the 1990-91 season, in detail from game to game. And from the jump, like, he wasn't playing Petrovic. He said there weren't any minutes for him. And I kind of thought that was a little bit bunk, because Petrov saved our bacon quite a bit in that postseason. And you could tell he was only getting better. He was one of the few Blazers we had who could create his own shot. And he could also score off of the catch and shoot, and he wasn't afraid. And I think you need a little bit of that, just gusto on your roster. So getting Petrovic and seeing him blossom elsewhere really hurt, especially when you look at their thought process. They said they didn't want future assets for him because they want to win now. But if you're saying you don't have minutes for someone to win now, how did you expect to incorporate Walter Davis in? And by this time, Walter Davis was completely washed up. I think if you think of Dale Davis, Walter Davis was 2 times as washed as Dale Davis was when he came to the Trailblazers. And so you really traded a future All-NBA performer for a player who only played half a season. And whenever he got in, Walter Davis did not perform. So I think that was the first major mistake the Blazers had. And I do think it cost them in that Lakers series. And that season was incredibly interesting to me because Portland was unstoppable, to put it as bluntly as possible. They really kept the momentum from that 1990 finals run, and they were the media pick to win it all. You know, they jump out 11-0, 19-1. They end the year on a 16-game win streak. Just running through teams. They had 3 All-Stars, Drexler, Porter, Duckworth. Adelman coached them. 63 wins. They led the league. The championship was going to run through the Rose City, and got off to a little rocky start. I think Portland got a tougher draw than most probably pundits thought, getting the rival Sonics. And while Portland won all 5 regular season games against Seattle, those games went down to the wire. There was the triple overtime thriller at the Seattle Center Coliseum where Porter hit the 3 that was probably too late in that second overtime, but they won. There was the 20-point comeback in the Tacoma Dome. Side note, I wish the Sonics were back. I wish they would play games in the Tacoma Dome sometimes, because that would be incredibly fun to buy tickets, take a road trip up there and support your team. Like, watching those highlights and hearing that the noise, it felt like a collegiate atmosphere. Even if we played the Sonics in a playoff series, like being able to buy tickets to go up there and cheer on the Blazers would be magical. But Portland, they were in position to sweep. They handled business fairly well at home. Game 3, they're up 2. Sedell 3 sizes up Danny Ainge, basically hits a buzzer beater for 3. They ride that momentum into a Game 4 victory. And back then, it's best of 5. Portland loses, first 1 seed to ever get upset by an 8 seed. And now you would really feel the pressure mounting in a fishbowl town that is Portland, where the Blazers are the main attraction 12 months out of the calendar year. They respond, though, and they blow out the Sonics. The lead goes up to as much as 30, and you breathe a little bit of sigh of relief. Looking back, I'm almost like, how does that happen? Like, even though, yeah, they played you tough, you're the 63 win Blazers. You got to handle your business, but they do that in the next round. They play the Utah Jazz, who have had their own battles with the Phoenix Suns, going back and forth with first round series. Could have been Phoenix again, and Phoenix gave Portland a little bit of trouble. They gave Portland their first loss of that regular season in Portland. They would have been out for blood after that incredible Western Conference Finals the year prior. But alas, we got Stockton and Malone, a team also looking to make their mark in the Western Conference, trying to get to their first finals, and they couldn't do it. And what I love about this matchup is, yes, it's incredibly biased. It's incredibly tunnel vision. It's a small sample size. But I truly believe to this day, Terry Porter is a better player than John Stockton based upon how he busted his ass in 91 and in 92. Terry Porter was the engine. The Blazers went as Porter went. He was our captain. He was introduced last by the PA announcer. He was our engineer, and he outplayed Stockton in 91, 22.2 points per game. He led the Blazers in scoring, nearly 7 assists, nearly 2 steals, 50% from the field. Yes, I know Stockton's numbers are going to look pretty gaudy. 18.5 points, 14.5 assists, 3 turnovers per game. If at the very least Porter just negated Stockton, you got Buck Williams on the other end doing yeoman's work on Karl Malone, making him work for everything he got. But that series is so beautiful to me because of Game 4. It was the last year. So Portland closed out 2 arenas. The Salt Palace in Utah, Game 4 of the 91 Western Conference semifinals. And then the following year, I'm going to talk about when we do it to the Phoenix Suns at the Madhouse on McDowell. But back to 91, Duckworth pours in 31 points in a hostile environment. Like, the Utah Jazz it hasn't just been a recent 5 to 10 year phenomenon where they've been really tough to beat at home. They've always been tough to beat at home. It started with Jerry Sloan, and they boasted one of the league's best home records. You were lucky if you maybe team beats them, they maybe lost 2, 3, 4 times a year. So to go in there to essentially say we're going to go up 3-1, we're going to end this series, they did it. And I love the fact that it was a guy like Duckworth who really probably rode off of a lot of momentum. And to see him come through, Porter would also run that pick and pop, and that was just so clutch. Like, I know a lot of players or fans give Duckworth flack for maybe some performances in the postseason that weren't as up to standard as maybe they should have been. But when the going got tough, Duck was clutch. He hit clutch buckets against the Bulls in the finals. He's always been there for us. So to see him do that, to get through Utah, like, as a fan, you're rewatching these games and you're thinking, okay, we go 5 against the Sonics. Okay, let's chalk that up to maybe the Northwest rivalry. But then to answer that with a 5-game series, 4-1 over a tough Utah team, you're feeling good going into the Western Conference Finals. And it was the matchup that everyone had wanted to see since the exhibition season. It was the Blazers versus the Lakers. Can Magic Johnson and James Worthy get the Lakers back to glory? Or is the Pacific Division really Portland's territory now? This is probably the series that keeps my mind wandering whenever I want to start thinking about Blazers the most, because of the fact it really sparked my disdain for the Lakers, even though I really respect the hell out of Magic Johnson and James Worthy and those Showtime Lakers. These weren't the Showtime Lakers, though. They were older. They weren't expected to be a real threat against the Blazers. They were breaking in a new rookie coach, Mike Dunleavy, who would go on to coach our Portland Trail Blazers in 97, 98, 99, etc. But it's the one that got away to me because we had beaten the Lakers 3 out of 5 times in the regular season, including taking 2 of 3 down at the Forum in Inglewood. I think that Blazer team, though, for whatever reason, and it caused them to lose probably every series that they lost over that run, was mentally they may have just not been where they needed to be. And I say that because I think when they were rolling like a fast break, they were a freight train that you couldn't stop them. But if something deterred it a bit, it almost started to go off the tracks, and they would lose leads and they would lose them quick. And unfortunately, that's what happened in game one. It's a game that I think longtime Blazer fans still will remember. You're up 12 going into the fourth quarter. Drexler was absolutely money. Story goes in the book that I referenced, The Long Hot Winter, that Clyde Drexler told Rick Adelman he needed a breather. Pundits, of course, Monday morning quarterback said, no, your star player's leading you. You've got to go. You've got to keep him in there. I went back and I restarted that fourth quarter to see who was on that lineup. And I do think Rick Adelman deserves a lot of criticism for his choice. He went with Cliff Robinson, Walter Davis, which was the first appearance of the game for Davis, Buck Williams, Danny Ainge, Kevin Duckworth. I don't know if I would have played Robinson, Williams, and Duckworth in that front court. There was no backcourt scoring or creation. Danny Ainge is much more of a catch and shoot. What happened was it was within 3 minutes, the Lakers erased that lead. Portland fought hard. They had a chance to get back in the game. Buck Williams missed a couple of free throws. And just like that, the Lakers came in and they stole home court advantage. Portland was able to respond and they even ended up going to LA. But for whatever reason, like I said, our confidence was shattered. We got destroyed in those two games down in Southern California. And now you're looking at the unenviable task of trying to come back 3-1 against a Magic Johnson-led team. They killed them on the backboards in Game 5. And even in Game 2 and Game 5, they weren't putting up 100 points. I mean, they were just crashing the glass, doing whatever they could. You could just sense that the pressure was oozing off of them. But, you give yourself a chance. You win a Game 6, and the Game 7's back at that crazy Coliseum. Game 6, they had their chance. Cliff Robinson, God rest his soul, botched a 301 fast break that would have put Portland up with under a minute to go. People could have said the pass may have not been the best. Porter should have handed it off to someone else. Regardless, it's a 3-on-1. You got to convert it. Portland gets a block out of nowhere by Kersey to force a shot clock violation. Now you got Terry Porter. Last second shot. He's the man. Like he was our most clutch performer, and he gets a wide open 17-foot jumper, which would have won the game, forced to Game 7, and it doesn't drop. I mean, that's just kind of the breaks of the game. And I was reading again another book about the Blazers, and Porter was like, man, I make that shot 9 out of 10 times. I wish I had that shot. We that goes in, we're beating Chicago. Portland swept the Bulls in that regular season, and they would have had home court advantage. So you look at 90 and 91, really letting things slip out of your hands. For whatever reason, Portland had a lot of problems with two Lakers. The first was Byron Scott, and he loved shooting the basketball in the Memorial Coliseum. He shot 60% from the field and 53 from three. And I went back and I looked at the 91 finals statistics and hey, did he keep that up? No, he was the complete opposite. He shot 28% from the field and 20 from three in the finals against the Chicago Bulls. That's a tough one to swallow. Then you look at Vlade Divac. His quickness gave Duckworth a lot of fits. Duckworth was better when he could just back his body up against a more stronger, girthier center that could feel his weight. Divac would pull the chair out a bit, causing Duckworth to travel. He would reach around and poke. Duckworth just had a series to forget. I think he averaged something like 4.5 turnovers per game. In Portland, I think they probably went to Duck too much. And, watching a lot of that Game 6, they forced it into him to start the game. I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to build his confidence. But I think at the same time, you almost have to say, big fella, you delivered against us in Utah. This just isn't your cup of tea. And they really tried to force into him. And it was either causing, the offense was stagnating. The turnovers were mounting up. And then, you got the Lakers on the other end, really, really controlling the tempo. Magic Johnson was arguably the toughest defender, the toughest player of all time to defend. You've got a 6'9" point guard. We had to double him because this was, again, back when you could just post up and back down, back down, back down. There was no 5-second rule. So he could control the court at any point on the floor. And for whatever reason, the Blazers couldn't get it done. But I do take some pride in knowing Portland was on the right path. Again, I think had it been a best of 9, they get it done. Or even if it went to a 7th game, they get it done. They started doubling Divac from the baseline. And I picked that up because I was reading the Jordan Rules, which was by Sam Smith, details the 1990-91 Chicago Bulls. Phil Jackson attested to that strategy they saw working on film, and they implemented it themselves in their 5-game series win against the Lakers. So Portland basically gave them the blueprint. We just ran out of time. But you look at that and you think, okay, how this team are we starting to feel like the Buffalo Bills here? Like, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. We can get there, but can we actually get it done? And then you go to the 91-92 season. This is the team that got the furthest in terms of games played in the finals. They had the worst regular season record, still at 57 wins, which is just incredible. But the injury started to mount up. Clyde Drexler's knee flared up towards the end of the season, causing him to miss some time. That would be a reoccurring theme probably over the next, it probably played a large role in how Clyde Drexler was able to finish out his career. It really derailed. Like, he still made a couple of all-star teams, but he was never really the same player. It was his best season, though. And I think that was the reason the Blazers were able to still dominate the Western Conference, is because Clyde Drexler was an MVP. He finished second to Michael Jordan. He was a member of the Dream Team. He was first team All-NBA, voted in as a starter in the All-Star game. Like, Clyde had arrived like no other Blazer had since Bill Walton. And I would say like no other Blazer still has currently. Like, yes, Dame has made first team All-NBA. Dame hasn't been voted in as a starter by the fans, and Dame hasn't finished second in the MVP. I mean, hopefully he will, but Clyde was on a Wheaties box. Like, he was part of that dream team. Like, this was handpicked. And then you also look at the development of Cliff Robinson, where we're talking about a player who the year following would win Sixth Man of the Year. The year after that would become an all-star. Like, he was ready to shine. But you also look at players like Duckworth, who took a step back. Buck Williams took a step back again. Buck was 30 when we acquired him. He was 32 now. Played a lot of tough years in New Jersey. Jerome Kersey, while he was an absolute money player, wasn't the same Jerome Kersey of 88, 89, even 90. Like, he played balls to the wall. He left everything out there. The toughest practice player we had, heart and soul of the team. It was just bound to catch up to him. And, it did a little bit. But the Blazers were still a veteran team. Danny Ainge was still around. You still had guys like Mark Bryant off the bench. They were still 6 or 7 deep. But what was really interesting about this team, and there's also another book that, these books are available on Powell's or really anywhere. It's called Against the World. And it was written by, I think, Kerry Akers and Dwight James, but it really details that 91-92 season. And you can just go through, you can relive that season through the players' eyes and through their perspectives. A lot of trials and tribulations. Poor Duckworth thought he was getting traded every other season. I was again watching one of those games on YouTube, and the announcers were saying, like, oh, if the Blazers don't win it, Kevin Duckworth said he thinks he's getting traded. And that was during the 92 season. Duckworth had one more year after that, but he was traded in the offseason of 93. So to play with that pressure, I think, took a toll on the team, and they were still able to get to the finals. And really looking back at it, they did it with relative ease. They got a little bit of revenge against the Los Angeles Lakers. There's the 1-8 matchup. Again, no Magic Johnson due to the HIV. He announced his retirement in November of that season. But even that series had a little bit of historical context. If you remember, the Rodney King riots were happening right outside the Forum and all across Los Angeles. It forced Game 4 to be played 2 days later on the campus of UNLV. And I was finally able to watch this game I found it on YouTube. I had always wanted to watch it. It was a Blazer blowout, but they were talking about how, Vegas is a big Lakers hub, and, the fans were really rooting for the Lakers. But the Blazers went out and, like, in the layup line, started throwing down dunks. And throughout the game, Clyde had an incredible alley-oop. I mean, they were just banging all over the Lakers in that game. And there were quite a few Blazer fans towards the end of that one. So that was a little sweet revenge that the Blazers got. Again, they had another former foe in the semifinals, the Phoenix Suns. And to think, like, whenever I look back and think, oh man, I wish the Blazers would have won a title, they really were that elite, though, because the teams in the conference finals they were playing were damn good, and they were running through them. They beat the Suns in 5 games, including, again, they closed out Phoenix's own Veterans Memorial Coliseum. It was better known as the Madhouse on McDowell because it got loud. It was a small venue, very intimate, just like the Memorial Coliseum was. That was the double overtime game where, at the time, I believe it set the record for the most points scored in a playoff game, 153, 151, back and forth game. Porter had the incredible, and one to tie it in regulation. And it really just cemented that Phoenix was never going to get over that hump. Portland was always going to be that bully, just like they were to Utah. And Utah was up next. And back to my point about me believing personally, like I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but Terry Porter to me is still better than John Stockton. And he came out in the 92 playoffs, the conference finals, just like gangbusters. He shot the shit out of that basketball in game 1 and game 2. I believe he had like 41 in game 1 and like 36 in game 2. Overall for that series, he busted Stockton's ass. In that series, he averaged 26 points per game over the 6-game series, which led the team. 8.3 assists, again, led the team. 4 boards, shot 55% from the field and 53% from 3. You look at Stockton, 14 points, 11 assists, 2 rebounds, 40% from the field. Of course, we know Buck Williams is doing what he can to limit Karl Malone. And I don't know if the announcers were salty because one of them was Cotton Fitzsimmons, who was the coach of the Phoenix Suns. The Blazers had just sent packing. But he was like, oh, no, this series is going 7. Blazers can't win on the road. Okay, game 6, get down early, fought back. Clyde just bangs it on Mark Eaton. Terry Porter gets a and one towards the end, and they're going to the finals. I mean, you're looking – I don't think people realize how impressive this feat is. One, to stay together, to have 6 or 7 key players that all stay together, that like each other, minimize injuries. You're able to go to a finals for the second time in 3 years. And in that other year, you still made it to the conference finals. That's really incredible. Unfortunately, you're going up against the greatest of all time in Michael Jordan. And those Bulls were even better than the previous years. They had won 67 games, and that season was what really allowed Chicago, as I mentioned earlier in this chat, to have the best record over that 3-year span. Like the 67 wins, he was the MVP. Utterly dominant. And they were dominant because Scottie Pippen rounded into a dream teamer. Horace Grant took the next step forward. John Paxson was a marksman. I mean, B.J. Armstrong came off the bench. Bill Cartwright knew his role. This team was fucking good. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And I would say, without a doubt, the 92 Bulls were the best team that I have ever seen a Blazers team face. Yes, better than the 2000 Lakers. The 92 Bulls were so impressive. Watching that series, they had the length on the wings to kind of mess up our passes or to run with us on the break. I mean, you're looking at thoroughbreds and Jordan and Pippen that were able to go stride for stride with us. And it really came down to a few things. And so this was the other question we got from Donnie Fowler at Skate for Blazers, who wants to know, was there anything this team could have done to overcome the Bulls in the finals? And while I believe that hurdle would have been the highest of them all, yes, there was. I mean, it was a 6-game series, and I know people are going to look back and probably think that a lot of those games were blowouts or non-contest. They're going to remember the shrug in game 1. Yes, it was a 30-point loss, but this Blazer team had their opportunities. They were, I know it's crazy to say, but their game 4 win at home in Portland was the only home victory by a Western Conference team in the NBA Finals over a 5-year span from 89 to 93. 1-13. So, you know how we all view the Western Conference as the big dogs for the past 10, 20 years? The East had the beasts back in the day. It ran through Boston, Detroit, Chicago. I mean, it ran through those cities. And I think it's tough to say, we only won one, but Phoenix didn't do it with the best record, the home court advantage. The Lakers didn't do it twice. It happens. The Bulls were that good. But yes, I do think Portland could have won that series. A couple of factors played key roles in Portland not. Portland played, as I discussed earlier, just with too much pressure. We did a TBT, I believe is either this summer or last summer, talking about game 4 of the finals. And my God, if you have a chance, find that game on YouTube and just watch the NBA on NBC introduction. I mean, clearly the NBC intros were godlike, and Marv Albert, Bob Costas, Dick Enberg, whoever wrote those, the voiceover it sets the stage. But how they set it up was basically like, Clyde Drexler, you got to win this title or else you're a fucking bum. I mean, that in so many words. And so you have the media just like constantly spewing this, you got to win a championship, got to win a championship. And it's no different now, but you're looking at a team that had been there in 90, stubbed their toe in 91, you're back there in 92. There was a lot of pressure. And so whenever they had a chance to kind of put Chicago back on their heels or go up in the series, they weren't able to do it. Game 3 was a sloppy game by both teams. Portland wasn't able to take advantage of the home crowd. You look at game 5 after tying up the series, after the game 4 victory, Jordan goes off and they weren't really ever in that one. I think they ended up losing by 10. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, they were great at playing loose. And they had the best chance, I think, of any Jordan finals opponent to force a game 7. They were up 15 points going into that fourth quarter. I think a lot of Blazer fans, I don't know if this is a good thing to remember, but I think a lot of Blazer fans only remember the game 7 in 2000, blowing a fourth quarter lead. But no, baby. We've been doing this for a minute. This is our patent that we've got on. We got copyright trademarks on blowing fourth quarter leads. Pippen and 4 reserves were able to chop that lead down in 3 minutes. We had a chance. Drexler was playing great. Kersey was running the break. And it just, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was just the basketball god saying it's time. Like this is the end of an era. But we had a chance to force a game 7. And you never know what could have happened in that series. But I really think Portland could have won had Rick Adelman been a little bit ahead of the curve. And it's hard to blame him for this one. You can blame him for the 1991 Game 1 debacle against the Lakers. A little bit tougher to blame him for this one just because teams weren't using players out of their comfort zone. It wasn't a positionless NBA. It was you're a center, you stay on the block. You're a power forward, you stay foul line and in. Okay, you're a point guard, you distribute the ball, you bring it up the floor, yada, yada, yada. Like it was very pigeonholed. This is what you do. Whether it was maybe a last resort, but during game 4, Portland found a little bit of magic, and I really wish Rick Adelman would have stuck with it. Jerome Kersey had committed a flagrant foul on Scott Williams with about 8 minutes to go, 7-8 minutes to go. The Bulls were up 8. We were able to come back, and it was sparked because Cliff Robinson was put at center. And we talked about his versatility. He did it against the Spurs in 1990, guarding David Robinson. If you could do it against David Robinson, give me Cliff Robinson on Bill Cartwright any damn day of the week. Portland should have gone small. I think they could have beaten Chicago. Porter, Ainge, Drexler, Kersey, Robinson. That was the 5 that were the catalyst during that fourth quarter in which Portland outscored Chicago 27-19 to tie up the series. I really love that lineup. Kersey could have been a power forward back in the day. I mean, God knows he was built like an ox. He could run like a horse, and he could shoot. He could finish. He could defend. He's going to throw his body on defense. He's going to dive for loose balls. I think Kersey could have handled Horace Grant. You got Drexler at the 3. I mean, Clyde Drexler was a physical specimen. 6'7", could have played the 2 or the 3. It allowed Terry Porter to stay on the floor as a ball handler. Danny Ainge coming up, just making a lot of smart decisions, shooting the basketball, spacing the floor. It could have been done. And lastly, more shots for Terry Porter. As we discussed, Porter being the engine, he only took something like 7 shots in game 3. And it was really the talk of the media going into game 4, because Porter hit so many big shots in that game 2 victory. And of course, he just was murdered from 3 against the Utah Jazz the series prior. At times, Porter was a little too passive. And that was the big knock on Terry Porter, is he wasn't looking for his shot enough when he was the best shooter on the team. He was probably the second best overall player on the team. He was our all-star. We needed him to be a little bit more assertive. But again, there are a lot of mouths to feed. So it was striking the right balance. But again, if you're looking for what Portland could have done, they should have went smaller. They should have utilized Kersey and Robinson's versatility. And they should have found ways to run more plays for Terry Porter. I think at times Clyde just ended up with the ball and was like, I'm going to go one-on-one. And it just didn't work out. He was not the one-on-one player that Jordan was. And so Clyde definitely went out of his arsenal a bit in that series, but it wasn't the reason we lost. I just think the Bulls were, 1, that good, and 2, we didn't play perfect. And those were a couple of ways we could have played perfect, but we didn't. And it's really interesting to look back on that run, just how dominant we were at home. And then to see us not perform at home in the series we lost, it's really just a strange thing to wrap my mind around. Like, if you look over the course of those 3 years, Portland played 11 series. They were 8-3. In the 8 series wins, a perfect 23-0 at home against playoff basketball level competition. That's insane. That's so hard to do. Even the Bulls, the Lakers, they were losing. Detroit, they lost at home. We were winning in those 3 series losses, 3-6. So that's just so hard for me to comprehend how dominant we could have been. But we weren't. In the series we lost. And there is one other avenue I'd like to discuss before wrapping this up, is the biggest what if to me. Clearly, if Sabonis is able to come over, I think it's lights out, game over. Chicago had always had a history of not playing well against teams with dominant centers. You get Sabonis in there, he's running circles around Bill Cartwright, he's passing from the post. It just opens up the offense. I think you see more of a early 2000s Sacramento Kings, also coached by Rick Adelman, type of motion offense where you've got the bigs able to dissect from the elbows, whether it's Weber or Divac. Sabonis would have been able to do that. Like, the knock on Portland was slow the tempo down, make them a half-court team, stop their fast break, you stop the Blazers. Well, if you get a player like, Savas, that's not going to happen. But again, with the way the political relations were between the nations, that just was never going to happen. The other way was a realistic fix. Charles Barkley had been drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers in 84, just had never been able to get that team over the hump, whether it was a lack of talent on the roster or going through Jordan and the Bulls in the East, or the Celtics with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. Couldn't do it. He was pretty vocal, though, and he wanted out. The 3 teams that he explicitly stated: Portland, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Phoenix Suns. Now, in that book, Against the World, the rumors were at the deadline of the 92 season, could it have been Jerome and Danny Ainge and Kevin Duckworth for Barkley? Maybe you have to fix the cap, but Barkley even came to Portland in the offseason and flew out, like basically interviewing. Like, he's like, I want to come here. So that's interesting to think about, because the Lakers thought they had a deal with him with James Worthy, but that got pulled at the last minute. And then he ultimately gets traded for Jeff Hornacek. I think Mark West and Andrew Lang, either Mark West or Tim Perry was one of the other two, but Andrew Lang got sent over there as well. And clearly a steal. He went on to become MVP of the 93 season. He led the Suns to their first finals since, and they had the best record. I have I struggle thinking about that because if you look at it, Kevin Duckworth really only played one other season with Portland. And Jerome Kersey was gone by the 95 season, and he was on the decline as well. So if you're looking at it from a basketball perspective, it's an easy yes. But Jerome Kersey is one of my favorite Blazers of all time, and obviously I love Kevin Duckworth. But I don't think anybody, Michael Jordan included, is stopping a four-headed monster of Drexler, Porter, Barkley, and Cliff Robinson. That's not even including guys like Buck Williams, Danny Young, who you'd still have filling out the roster. So that's something to think about. Like Portland had an opportunity to keep it going. I honestly think their 93 roster was one of the best they had. They were able to sign Rod Strickland. They brought in Mario Ellie from Golden State, who played fantastic. And I just found out this fall why we didn't keep him. It's because we wanted to open up salary cap room to sign Chris Dudley. So, like we talked about evening things out, how all of those great moves Jeff Petrie made, that's kind of a stinker there because we traded our center Duckworth for Harvey Grant. That really never materialized either. It was a slow decline. Drexler's knee flared up again in the 93 season. Again, he played extended minutes in the Dream Team, and so he played nonstop basketball for 12 months, and then you're starting the season over again. Jerome Kersey was starting to get banged up. They finished the year in the 4 seed. They had home court advantage. Drexler wasn't able to play in game 1. Again, they blew another fourth quarter lead against the Spurs. Drexler came back. They just couldn't. I mean, they won game 2. He had like 40 points. But game 3 and game 4, I think game 4 went to overtime. They could never get the series back to Portland. They would have had a chance to go up against the 1 seed Phoenix Suns. I mean, they started out that 93 year like 7 or 9-0. So it could have continued even without Barkley. Like you're just talking about health, and that goes back to the Drazen Petrovic trade because before Petrovic, left us, far too soon. He was a third-team All-NBA player in the 93 season. So you can say, Clyde, take your time, brother. Like, let's rehab, relax. Like, you're fine. Drazen, you're going to start, and you're going to kill it. You clearly had Porter and Strickland, who could have shared point guard duties and, limited Terry's minutes. Cliff Robinson was ready to take more of the reign from Jerome. Like, there were ways. But, again, that's why I used to be a championship or bust fan. Maybe the 2000 Blazers scarred me. 2001 Blazers scarred me a bit. But the older I get, the further away I get from that. And a lot of it has to do with these 90, 91, 92 Blazers. The memories that I have, I hold the teams so near and dear to my heart. Like anytime I can find like some memorabilia or artwork surrounding those teams, I keep it. I watch the games that we win. I even sometimes watch the games that we lose. And I have to think to myself, this team never won a championship, but they're the reason I kind of am who I am to some extent, to a large extent. So how can I be a championship or bust fan when they didn't win a championship, but they brought me so much joy? And it's all about joy. It's all about just enjoying the team that you're watching, whether they're a first round exit or they make it to the finals. Going back and watching and discussing this, during this episode is also just realizing how much luck goes into winning a championship. I mean, it just takes an incredible amount of luck to get it done, to get that 15th, 16th win and hoist up the Larry O'Brien trophy. You got to stay injury free. You got to get the right matchups. You got to get hot on the right days. Portland had a lot of luck, but not enough. But in the end, that's okay. And that's kind of my approach with the current Blazers. Like we made the Western Conference Finals. Like that was a 19-year drought of getting to the conference finals. And that was incredible. I am so amped for the season. If we win the championship, of course it would be incredible. But, can we get back to the conference finals? Like that would be almost just as good of an accomplishment. Like that's a fun run. Like I remember that run, Sage, in 2019. Being there in the arena, watching a lot of games with you. We were there for Dame's shot against the Thunder. We watched Game 7 in my Blazer room. Like that was incredible. Even though we got swept against the Warriors, like we were there. Our friend Denise was there. We watched it with him. Like who knows if we'll ever get that chance again. So just enjoy. It's not as much as great as it would be to win a title. It's not all about that. It's all about finding something you love and embracing it.
Or listening to how you recanted it, it seems like we were one backup creator away from at least one championship. When you talked about how we blew a lead because we didn't have a backup point guard, who was the backup point guard in those scenarios? Because it just seems like, damn, if we had one more ball handler, we could have done something special.
Danny Young came over from the Sonics, and I thought he was pretty good in 89-90. He was actually a really good 3-point shooter, and he was serviceable. Like, there was no qualms. I think he just started to fall off a little bit, as players tended to do in that era. Like, once you hit 30, 31, medicine isn't as good, training isn't as good as it is today, recovery isn't as good as it is today. So it just kind of fell off a bit. And again, I think that's why I said the Danny Ainge trade was both a gift and a curse, because you got a battle-tested veteran who could shoot the shit out of the basketball, space the floor, but he's a 2 guard, and you already had a backup 2 guard, a really damn good one. And again, you're left without a backup point guard. And so I also think what happened in 91 as well is Wayne Cooper came back. So we ended up trading Wayne and like Fat Lever, and it was just a horrible trade for Kiki Vandeweghe. Well, Wayne came back, and he was on his last legs, but he was really solid in 1990. Great at blocking shots, could finish, good rebounder, just was really giving a strong 15 minutes a night. He was really not the same player after 1990. Like, that was all he had left in the tank. He stayed on those rosters, but I thought we could have used another backup big, especially in that Lakers series. If you're looking against, like, how do we match up against, AC Green and Vlade Divac and Sam Perkins? Like, they had a lot of modern bigs on that roster. Look at Perkins stretching the floor. You look at Divac, being a playmaker out of the 5. That was tough. We really only had Duckworth. I mean, Mark Bryant was like a decent backup 4. Like, he's going to come in, he's going to rebound and play defense, but probably not going to hit too many shots. And he still is a power forward. Like, we didn't really have a center. So then you're like, okay, is Cliff your center? If Cliff guarding one, who's going to guard the other? So, there was probably, a couple of holes that they had. And maybe looking back at those box scores too, like, you would see, especially in the championship series or even against the Lakers, like, the 7-man rotation, you got players playing like 40 minutes plus. Buck Williams, I remember reading, was like, "You're not taking me out," and Adelman didn't take him out. I mean, that's Buck Williams. I would go with what he wants to do as well. But for a team that was as deep as they were, I think they could have maybe made a consolidating trade. And brought in one more, so you have like a great 8-man rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sometimes you just don't have the horses you need, and I think that it might have been the center, but I definitely think that we needed another playmaker just to spell Porter, and I think what we should do is you should share some of the YouTube games on our Twitter, Holy Backboard, at Holy Backboard, and share some of what you've done to entertain yourself for the last few months, and share it with people. Because I think this podcast is awesome. It's great to share your memories with people, but to see these teams and how they were constructed, and see how great Drexler was at his prime, and TP and the entire team. I think that would be awesome to share it with everyone that's listening, and all of the community, because those teams were special, and it's obvious that they were special to you.
Yeah, and I think you look at a guy like Clyde Drexler, and maybe he gets forgotten a little bit. Mark Spears responded to a tweet, was like, "Who was the most forgotten superstar in basketball?" And he was like, Larry Bird and Clyde Drexler, and he's right. Drexler, there's been updated lists that have him behind players like Ray Allen and Vince Carter and Reggie Miller, and I cringe, because I don't think people appreciate the absolute all-around brilliance that Drexler had. Was his shot ugly as sin? Yes. Could he only drive right? Yes. Okay. But he was probably the best passer on the team, unselfish, one of the best finishers of all time. He's great in the passing lanes, a great rebounder. I mean, he was a prototypical shooting guard, like that 6'7", just towered over everybody else. I mean, he hit big buckets. He really could do everything. I mean, there's a reason why Damian Lillard is still chasing Clyde Drexler in the record books. Drexler was that dude. And then you get a player we didn't really talk too much about. And it's unfortunate. Obviously, there's only so much time, but I mean, Jerome Kersey, his running partner on the fast break, like there's times like I watch those highlights, I still get chills watching Kersey and Drexler finish on the break. Drexler was a little bit more finesse. Kersey was force and absolute raw power. Like Kersey always showed up in the big games. Like there's a poster that Nike released in I think 1990 that really summed up the Portland Trailblazers. So it was their three Nike athletes. It was basically had Terry Porter running at you, and it had Buck and Jerome Kersey like running right behind him in almost like a triangle. And the caption was just "uh-oh," because when opposing defenses saw Portland on the break, it was lights out. It was game over. Like they were able to change momentum in the bat of an eye. I mean, they could go from a 2-point game to a 12-point game, and the arena was about to blow its top off, and it was over. Like they were able to change a game so quickly. It was the most vaunted fast break that I've ever seen, and really what basketball is all about to me. It's just like that entertainment, just that emotion. Like as someone who's never been able to dunk, seeing people who can dunk is still fascinating and just gets me out of my seat. So, man, I wish I was able to be around and actually watch those games in person, because it would have been a sight to behold.
Yeah. It's crazy how long you talked. I was like, damn, how is he not taking a breath? Like that was crazy. Because you definitely passed the 30-minute threshold. I don't know. I can't see how long it has been, but it has been quite a lengthy time of you talking about some very special teams.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think every person has got that one thing, like that their brain just has too much space. Like if you look at somebody's brain and what it's allocated for, and there's always like maybe like a certain color that's like miscellaneous. Well, mine's the Trailblazers, and specifically the early 90s Blazers. Like that's taking up my miscellaneous part. And even when I was a kid, my teachers told my parents, like, Dustin he's not reading as much as he should. Like, I don't know what's going on. And my mom's like, well, give him a Sports Illustrated and he'll be able to tell you front to back, cover to cover what happened. Like I was a sports kid. Like I was a basketball junkie. Like we talked about the NBA and NBC. There were triple headers. Like I would sit down, I would just watch those. Like I would get so geeked for those games. Like I absolutely loved the game of basketball. And it's just kind of strange how it happens. Like my parents don't really have a tie to the sport. I just found it, or it found me, and I kind of fell in love with it. And it's still to this day. Telly Bean. She's like, feed me.
Shout out to Dustin for being so willing to express what has been such a big part of his life. We are available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Himalaya Podcast, Dash Radio, Nothing But Net Radio, Tuesdays 2 to 3, 4 to 5 Eastern. And thank you so much for listening. And we will be back to talk about the current team pretty soon, because I got some stuff I would definitely want to talk about. So thank you so much for listening.
You can also find this podcast on holybackboard.com. I have a upcoming blog post that I'm going to discuss my top. I'm the aesthetics guy on the podcast. So I'm going to be.
If we're comparing your aesthetics to mine, yeah, you're definitely the
So
one.
I'm going to be doing something about my favorite courts of the NBA season. So a couple teams got a couple new courts, hardwood classics. Portland got a new court. So I love that stuff. That'll be out there. And also the schedule drops tomorrow. We're recording this Thursday night.
Oh, for realsies?
They are dropping it tomorrow at noon on the Jump. So it should be out there. They're releasing it in halves. So we'll probably be right back with you this weekend talking about the schedule, talking about what we expect out of training camp. The Blazers have done a pseudo media day. A lot of the players have came through and done video conferencing interviews, speaking at lengths, various lengths. A lot of good things came out of that I think we'll have our pulse on. And Sage, the first preseason game next Friday, ESPN against the Kings. I can't wait.
Quick last prediction. Who are we opening the season against?
Oh, yeah, this is something good because we will not know. Oh, God. So we already got shammed. Didn't get an opening night game on national television, or didn't get one the following day on the 23rd. We didn't get a Christmas Day game. So, man, it's so hard to tell because the Christmas games were so random. That kind of threw me for a loop. I want you to guess first.
I'm going Nuggets. I think that the NBA wants to really push that rivalry because of the mastery of 2019. I think that now both teams are ready to compete. I think it's going to be against Denver.
Oh, man.
We play Denver a million times a year, so why wouldn't it be the first game?
Yeah, you really put me on the spot here. I will go ahead and I will guess. I'll guess the Los Angeles Lakers. I know they play on the 22nd, but it's not uncommon for teams to play back-to-back. I think we may actually, no, I take that back because if we were playing the Lakers, that definitely would be a national TV game, and we didn't get that on the 23rd. I think they're setting us up to play the Kings again. I know we're playing them right now in the preseason. We also play the Nuggets. I'll guess the Kings. It's the closest game that we have possible, so that's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good guess. It's just it would be a lot sexier against the Lakers than the Kings.
But as Dame pointed out in his interview, and we're getting off topic again, which we're known to do. We got to get off to a hot start. The years we perform well, we get off to good starts. So I'll take a couple of cupcakes. Then let's get into the meat and potatoes of our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we're really out this time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Me talk about my favorite thing that's not family.
Wherever you may be, this is Bill Shinley. Good night, everybody.
Let's go!